Welcome back to another episode from Rep by Rep Strength Podcast. Today I'm sitting down with Joe Dzubak. And Joe, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man. Why don't you go ahead and just give everybody a little rundown about your background and where you're working right now and where you're wanting to move.
All right. Well, I'm a strength and conditioning professional right now. I'm working out of Torque Strength and Conditioning, which is in St. Paul, Minnesota. Education background, I started off within business and decided that's really not where I wanted to go with my life. So I decided to look elsewhere. And my senior year, I ended up deciding I love nutrition and fitness and health and all that sort of stuff a lot more than I do selling cars or something along those lines. So I decided to get my master's in strength and conditioning from the University of Wisconsin, River Falls, and just graduated in May. But during that time, I've been working with military populations, working with firefighters, police officers, EMS. So that's what I've really been doing for the past 2.5 years now, is really focusing on the tactical side of strength and conditioning, trying to bring operational readiness to the tactical population.
Yeah, and we were just talking a few minutes ago about like general preparedness and readiness for, both tactical and general population. So, what are you seeing across the board? Like, I mean, do people even have a good understanding of basic health and nutrition, in your opinion, or what's that looking like for you?
No, it's always an educational process. What I'm trying to do is become an officer in the United States Army right now, where I'd be a registered dietitian working alongside strength and conditioning coaches and really working on the H2F program right now. So that's, my goal is to be able to bring education to soldiers, especially ones who are coming from areas where they don't have as much information on proper nutrition and training. Because that's one of the biggest factors that comes in to being a soldier, is being able to take care of yourself, because you are the one that's on the ground and you're the one taking care of the equipment and making sure everything's working properly. And if you're not educated on how to take care of yourself, are you going to be able to perform at your job, especially to the most optimal level? And what I've seen between general population and soldiers, it's very, very similar. It's, education is big. Making sure they understand what they're eating, why they're eating it, what vitamins and minerals and other things that go along with each of the foods they choose, and how foods affect their overall health in general and how they feel. If you're eating gas station food all the time, or going out to eat every meal, and you're wondering why you have gut issues and why, your 2 mile time suffering and stuff like that. It's you have to start looking at, like, what am I doing in my daily life? And, that even goes to the general population, on if they're sitting behind a desk all day and they're, eating donuts and drinking too much caffeine and not getting enough sleep. Is just like, you have to look at what are these factors in my life that are really affecting me, that I can control. And, that's one of the things I want to focus on throughout my career, is making sure people understand, like, they are in control of their health and their own well-being.
Yeah. So like, it sounds like a more holistic viewpoint, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Because that's one thing I'll talk to you guys about pretty frequently, is it's multifactorial. Like, it's not just as simple as like come in and work hard in the gym when you're there. I mean, it's the other 23 hours of the day. I know that sounds cliche, but
really, it's true though.
Yeah. I mean, just getting these guys to understand, like, hey man, like you put no calories in your body today. And if you have, it's been, I mean, to your point, like a granola bar, or maybe an apple along with a granola bar if I'm lucky.
Or they went to Taco Bell.
Yeah.
And why is my stomach all messed up right now?
Yeah, man. It's like, hey, the quality of what you're putting in matters. But there's always a better option, or, let's, exactly what you were saying, is just educate them as much as possible so they can make more informed decisions.
To that point, and especially with soldiers and being in the barracks and all that sort of stuff, it's one of the biggest complaints is having access to quality nutrition. They have the DFAC, but how often are they able to get to the food? What are their work schedule like? If they can't get there because of transportation issues. Then it comes down to, well, do I have the ability to go to the store and grab something? Yes or no? If yes, what kind of things can I keep within the barracks that are going to be, nutritious, fruits and vegetable or fruits really that you can have that won't spoil. If you have a refrigerator, you can have vegetables in there. You can have, lean meat snacks that you can keep in there, things that you can microwave, like you can have microwavable eggs, as nasty as that sounds. I mean, it's one of those things you can do. So it's like you can have these options to make snacks and have healthy snacks alongside, living in places like the barracks where you don't have access to, like if you're on a college campus going down to the dorm or going to, walking to Walmart or something like that. So it's, there's always options that soldiers have to be able to go ahead and choose. It's comes down to the education piece again of like telling them like, hey, you can go ahead and do this, or you can go have this opportunity.
Yeah. I think one of the most popular ones I see was I was out with some guys the other day on a training exercise, and I wasn't carrying the rucks that these guys were carrying. I was just hanging out with them while they were doing their training. But whenever they had a stop point, the most popular foods I saw were beef jerky, trail mix, and then some dried fruits. Were pretty much across the board for everybody. And then of course, like the technology is just getting better and better all the time in terms of understanding, hydration levels and how to refill that, so to speak. Because it's not just guys drinking water now. It's guys, okay, let's put Gatorade in, or let's have Gatorade instead, or
the liquid IV.
Yeah. That's the one I've seen now is liquid IV. And then guy brought me one last week from it was like approved or developed through the CDC or something.
Okay,
but it's a new one that I'd never heard of before. But it's a step in the right direction. Like these guys are starting to understand the importance of, hey, hydration and fueling your body actually matters.
Right.
But yeah, like we were talking a little bit ago about training and about doing the simple things very well. So when you first start working with guys, I mean, are they even coming in with a basic understanding of how to squat, how to deadlift, any of that stuff? Or are you starting at, block zero?
Depends on the person. I've seen it where they're very capable of squatting, benching, deadlifting. Even some of them are really good at Olympic lifting. I've also seen a lot of the times where they have, it's square zero. They've never stepped foot in the gym before. The only thing that they've heard of exercise is running. Mm-hmm. And so then it's, you're starting from square zero and teaching them and having them understand, proper movement patterns. And, you see coaches out there and you see other trainers and they're like, we're going to load you up today. You've never done anything in the past, but you're going to be squatting 315 or benching 315 by the end of today's session. And it's like, well, let's take a step back and let's look at you as an individual and like, what are your biggest weakness points and what can we do to really fix that? It's like, if we're going to, teach them to squat, maybe we're going to have them do a goblet squat first, or maybe even have them do a sandbag squat, or maybe they can't even do that. And it just got to be a body weight squat to teach, at first. So, I've seen it all from, practically an elite athlete to, never stepped foot in the gym before. And it's up to the coach to be able to decide like, hey, where are we going to place you? And what is it going to look like for your training to make, whatever your goal is to be obtained?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that works best. Here's what we've got. Here's one progression, one regression, so to speak. But the regression's not bad. It's just understanding, okay, this is where you are, this is where this guy's at, and getting them to understand the principles of everything. Mm-hmm. And to your point about the let's max it and see what we can do. I'm not a big fan of the percentages for that reason, especially in that type of environment where there's highly competitive people that are going to, push through poor positions.
Or if you're working, I've worked with police officers, and the last thing you want to do is injure them so they can't even be on duty. And that goes for military as well. But the other thing too is being too sore. So if you're working off of percentage-based programs, like maybe they did too much on one day and they can't perform on their shift, or they're too sore to go ahead and have a takedown on a guy getting away. So it's what I've ended up doing is going off of reps in reserve, or rating a perceived exertion. I've even tried mixing them together, seeing how that's worked, and it auto-regulated programs for this population, in my opinion, I feel is the best way to go, just because, if you're going to be like, hey, work up to a heavy single today, it's like, this is all I can do. I don't want to push it too much. It comes down to, can they understand their body, and which comes with education and teaching them, what that's like, but it makes them able to have a say in what they're doing with their training too. So it builds more buy-in and be like, hey, this is what I'm going to work up to today. Or maybe we can try this, not percentage, but just like feel, RPE 2, like RPE 7 or 8, and bringing that up to an RAR 1 or something. It goes in between. It's a weird concept being able to use RPE. So it'd be like, it's almost like a fatigue stop with RPE and RAR in the same. Yeah. So it's like, you're going to be at an RPE 8. And I don't know, I was listening to Max Marzo on it, because that's who I had one of my internships with, and he was trying to explain it to me. So I've been messing around with it myself a little bit more, and it's a interesting concept.
Yeah, no, that's literally what I do and how I outline. Because I'll explain to guys, for some of you guys, the following is going to click and make more sense than the other. Choose accordingly. So I'll explain RIR, the whole concept of, we're never going to be at 0, because that would mean you died. Right, but if like 1, 2, and 3, maybe a 4 RIR, and then for the RPE, getting them to understand, like it's going to take some time to understand how that shift happens, and what you used to perceive as difficult is no longer, what you perceive as difficult now. And then, basically we'll adjust volume on the front side. We've just got some just jump mats. So we'll use 3 max jumps on the front side of the training session, and then use a simple stoplight system where, okay, if they're green today, like they're breaking a record, you can push weights a little bit more, and we can be a little more plus minus if need be. If we're in the yellow zone, like we're dropping 5% off of your best, okay, let's drop a set, but add a rep to everything. And then, from there, if you're red, if you're dropping 10%, we're going to drop 2 sets, add 2 reps to everything that we have planned. And that way, like I explained to him, if you are honest and completely trust what I'm saying, over the long term, this is going to work out in your favor. But if you're trying to get in a dick measuring contest with everybody and say, like, well, I squatted more than him, sure, my 4 reps look like shit, it doesn't work out, especially not in your favor, but that's the hard part, is getting these guys to really understand the implications of training today, and what that's going to do, and how that's going to influence your next week of training, your next month. Those residuals stick around, and they may not fully realize them for a while.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've seen too, is just making, they don't always have to push themselves into the ground, or, just, we're going to go into a smoke session today. It's like, you don't need it, I mean, every once in a while, yeah, sure, whatever, Friday, if you want to do it, and I'm not seeing you over the weekend, we can wreck you. And then Monday you're good to go. But, it's like I said, once you go back to the job, if you're a police officer, the last thing you want to do is, the last thing you don't want to happen is being able to move. So it's interesting to see, especially I don't have access to the jump mats or anything like that. So it's going off of like, hey, when you walk into the gym, or if you message me, and, I can just kind of see like, hey, you're not doing well today. We're going to have to take a step back. You're in some pain right now. So, that's what I do. I like doing, just like questionnaires, before a session, just like, how you doing? How you feeling? How, yesterday go with the bench session, or, something along those lines. And, then also just how their stress is throughout their job. Because I mean, these guys come in and talk about that. So that's how I run it. And, if I got to regress, I got to regress. If we can push it on a day, we can push it on a day. It's, it's very open to change. That's one thing with tactical populations that coaches need to realize. Is just like, it's not set in stone whatsoever because it can change instantly.
Mm-hmm.
You got to work up, you got to go. And it's, that's what I've found anyways.
No, man, I agree with that 100%. I think that's one of the things that, I've seen a lot more probably in the past 2 or 3 years where, I mean, we have automation for everything else. Why wouldn't we automate training? I mean, like the AI stuff, the computer stuff is great, but what you were just describing about the human element, absolutely necessary. Like human to human, you can just read it. And I've found as a coach over the years, you just get better and better and better about being perceptive and just like feeling the room to a degree, or feeling the individual and knowing, okay, something's off with this dude, and you can see it in the eyes. Sometimes you can feel it, but yeah, I mean, making those
how they walk in.
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. It's like, why is your body language crap? What's going on? But yeah, I think that's one thing that the AI will never be able to do is just because AIs don't have that human element, But
so all the people concerned about AI taking over strength coaches' jobs, it's not going to happen.
I don't think so. I think it's too important to have someone there on the floor feeling the room and the session, and being able to make those adjustments on the fly.
Yeah.
But yeah, for some reason everybody likes stuff to be set in stone and automated, and this is hyper rigid and so on. But sometimes stuff just doesn't go according to plan. You got to make halftime calls. But
I totally agree.
So something else we were talking about was you mentioned guys being like quad dominant, working on posterior chain, that kind of thing. Is that something else that you're seeing pretty consistently? Is weak posterior chains on everybody?
So as you see, young guys getting into the gym. So if they're 18 years old and they're in the Army and they're starting to work out, what are they going to go for? Is everything they can see in the mirror. So it's like you have this whole other part of your body that you need to work on, and that's what's going to make you work in the field. So you got your work. If we're doing a belt squat like you're talking about earlier, if someone's never squatted before, we can put them into that position. But if they don't know how to use their glutes or hamstrings to activate a movement too, it puts them at a disadvantage for all of the movements that they need for their job. So, we're going to really need to start focusing on glutes, hamstrings. Hamstring injuries are pain to come back from. As you know, if you have guys with that, then you working on a strong back too. A lot of guys want to neglect their back, or if they are going to do back, just pull-ups and just like, well, you have a whole nother portion, let's do some horizontal pulling instead of just vertical pulling on stuff. So that it's being able to teach like, hey, why don't we just try all these different things to see how you're going to become, a better, infantryman or soldier, or whatever your MOS is. It's just like, what can we do to make you better at that job? And people really forget that the whole back part of the body needs to be trained, including calves. And I know a lot of people don't like training calves, but they're an important part to, the whole ankle complex. If you're in boots all day, that is a huge thing that needs to be worked on. Injuries there, if you can't control your foot and ankle, I mean, it's just like, that's game over. I mean, that's one of the things that I've seen that strong feet win. So
what are you doing specifically to work on the ankle calf complex to combat guys being
floating ankle stuff? Cal Dietz, I know that some people don't like the stuff he does, but I feel like it works. I also do, if I put arbitrary as it is just like, can they do 15 reps single leg for body weight on calf raises? If they can do that, that's a good start for them. Then I'll just do seated calf raises as well. Sometimes even being in like a squatted position and having and just doing calf raises that way too. It's trying all different things to see what's going to work for someone and what's going to carry over. But the floating ankle, I think that's what's called. But yeah, the Cal Dietz stuff is working really well. Also doing barefoot training too. Don't want to be that guy that's like all barefoot and stuff like that. But different exercises, it does work to be in barefoot, to be able to feel like what your body's doing. And then why are you going to move to one way over another way? We can start looking at that. I like using sandbag implements to really tell that too. Like, are you having ankle collapse on certain issues? And or certain reasons for that, or how are you going to supinate or pronate off of working with the sandbag, because awkward loading movements and awkward implements I found are very important for the tactical population, because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, could have a guy down, you need to drag him.
Yep.
You need to pick up a sandbag, an actual sandbag, and load it. If you have, firefighters carrying stuff, rope pulls, a lot of those different things, it's really involved in the tactical community. So it's like, can you do all that sort of stuff? And are we seeing any issues, around it? Right. So that's why just barefoot training on certain things works out well. So you can start to see, like, why are you moving in one direction over another?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you bring that up, because weekly, just scheduled in our training, we have outside, like we just straight up go outside and do awkward object day. And it's, we have sleds that are loaded extremely heavy. We have other sleds that are heavy as well that we drag. And then from there, it can be an option of, whether you're doing a wader walk, front rack carry, zercher, sandbag, whatever, you just have to carry something that is not well calibrated,
Right.
So we had guys carrying, one of the smaller guys kind of surprised me. He was carrying a 125 pound, one of those black Rogue sandbags. And we had just practiced earlier in the week doing zercher squats. So this guy, gets down to that bottom position, loads it up, stands up, walks, 75 yards or whatever. And at the end of the session, we come back around. It's like, all right, does everybody understand why we zercher squat now? And you're going to be in these awkward positions. You have to understand tension and bracing and all of these things. But yeah, I 100% agree with the awkward objects, because you never know what's going to go on for these guys or where they're going to be, because the terrain is not like this nice level terrain. It is up in the mountains.
You got to be resilient.
Yeah.
You got to be resilient. God forbid a Humvee gets rolled over or something like that, gets hit with something, you got to get a guy out. I mean, you're in a position where your body isn't with a straight bar, right? I mean, you got to be able to do, load things, pick things up. I mean, if you're going to equate it to a training way, you could do a deficit sandbag deadlift. I mean, if they can't do that, you can do a deficit, regular barbell deadlift. But I mean, a deficit sandbag deadlift, I mean,
I'm going to steal that
moving all over the place, and you got to get it out. So I mean, it's just these things that I really, if you can't tell, I like sandbags.
Hell yeah, man.
So it's these things that you have to look at what the job is, and I mean, there's really not a lot of footage, for you to go out there and look at, like gameplays of football and stuff for tactical world. But I mean, the stuff you can find, and speaking with guys and really talking with them, like, hey, what have you experienced? Like, what are some of the things that you saw when you were ever deployed, if they were deployed, like, and you wish you were able to be better at? And it's just like, well, it's kind of bringing into the needs analysis. And it's
right.
A lot of coaches skip that step, and they're like, oh, well, I learned this from, my textbook. Like, we're going to do it this way. And just like, well, this is a population that isn't well studied.
Yep.
And, that's the thing that's changing right now. I mean, there's a lot of good people out there doing it. But, it's like, what can we do from actual firsthand experience? What research is out there right now where we can actually start building a model that is aimed towards tactical populations, and not taking directly from football or soccer or hockey or something like that. So don't skip the needs analysis for tactical. It's a completely different game. And, mobility is one of the things that a lot of people end up skipping. And Vernon Griffith's out there doing great things of really, with the hips. And that's huge for the military. Huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, spot on, because the mobility stuff, like I've started doing some RPR. Every day we start out with RPR, and then working with Donnie Thompson and the body tempering. That's been big, because I got that from Coach Schwinn down at the 58th, and he introduced me to tempering. Have you ever had tempering done?
I have not, and I don't know if I want to, because I've seen it.
If he would have told me what he was going to do, I would have been like, no, I don't want to do it. But he's just like, yeah, just lay down here. We're just going to roll this tool over you. Man, it hurt like hell doing it, but afterwards everything opens up. You get some release, and it's different than a foam roller, because a foam roller, you can kind of guard when you get into like your lat if it's a spot you don't like. But with it, if you're working a temper up and down there, you put your arm up overhead, you're on your side, and if there needs to be another guy right there, I mean, you can't do anything about it. So that's been big for our guys. But yeah, as far as like hands-on experience, like I've been able to go out a couple days on different trips with these guys and experience what they experience on a super small scale.
Mm-hmm.
And then trying to figure out, okay, if I was doing this X number of days that they are, compounded over time, what are the implications of that from training? Like, it's no wonder when I first got to this base and I was reading all the reports about, how many military-wide, how many knee injuries were there last year, how many hip injuries, low back injuries, and the list goes on, because it's money, it's missed time, and now you're talking, especially most importantly on a personal level. These like I've ran into guys who are 24 years old and have had a hip replacement. Like that, this boggles my mind. That should never happen.
Nope. That goes back to posterior training as well. I mean, if knee problems come from a lot of times, not saying all the time, but a lot of times, it's a quad dominant movement pattern. So if they're always using their quads, they don't know how to use, fire their hamstrings and glutes. I mean, it's where a lot of issues come from. If you look at a lot of the running too, I mean, if they're, PT every morning, if all they're doing is running every day, day in and day out, you're going to start running into patella issues, especially if it's on a pavement.
Mm-hmm.
If they're striking the ground, toes pointed down, that causes a lot of issues as well. So, I mean, it's even getting into the points of teaching proper running mechanics.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, a lot of the training they're going to be doing is in running shoes, and they're not actually going to be in full kit or anything like that. But, just teaching proper running mechanics, will it carry over to when they are wearing everything? Possibly, but you can also go ahead and take a look at it too. If they're doing ruck marches and stuff like that, like how are they positioning the ruck on them? Is it fitted properly? Because some guys don't do that, and then that causes a lot of low back pain. Are they leaning forward too much? And then you also have to look at how is their ruck actually packed. Some guys just throw stuff in there, and anyone listening to this who's been in the military knows that you don't pack a ruck right. I mean, you're in bad shape. So it comes down, you have to look at all the factors, and it's just the more data points you can get as an individual looking at stuff, the better it is. Be like, hey, maybe this could be causing X and Y, and then you have to kind of work back from that. If anyone hasn't read Building the Elite, I highly recommend it. They go over a lot of this sort of stuff too. I think it's Craig Weller, Jonathan Pope. Could be getting that totally wrong, but Building the Elite, that's a great resource if people are looking into military training as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, again, back to that same training exercise that I was attending the other day. These guys, before they go out there, they're getting their rucks checked one more time, and one guy had the loading was inappropriate. His heaviest object was on the bottom, his lightest stuff was on top, and they took a step back and went over it with everybody. They're like, hey, here's why you don't do this, and here's how it's going to load your body improperly, and it's going to result in boom, boom, boom. Mm-hmm. And all right, fair enough. So, but yeah, exactly the same thing with running mechanics. They need to have, that's something that needs to be implemented with these guys, because I don't know. I always think of the example with LeBron versus Wade when it comes to injuries and whatnot. And it's one small piece, but LeBron generally has his feet more underneath him. Whereas if you go back and look at Dwayne Wade's career, he's going to be out front, outpacing, heel striking first, that kind of thing, with impact force traveling less than favorable. So just one thing to look at with these guys too is what's happening if they're supinating their foot too much, pronating their foot too much, heel strike, all this stuff where they need to be educated on it from running specialists,
and getting proper footwear too, and not always going for the cheapest option for shoes and wondering why your feet are getting all blistered up. take care of your feet.
Yeah.
And, that's the thing that's carrying you. So,
Yeah. So let's see, what else are you going over with these guys? So you're talking to them about nutrition and proper training and whatnot. Like, what kind of monitoring are you doing throughout their because you said you're working with guys that are getting ready to go to selection courses, right?
yes, I am.
Okay.
So monitoring them they're very driven people, a lot of them, to the point where it's almost a detriment to them.
Yeah.
And where they always just want to keep doing more, or they do more than what I prescribe just because they think that, that's going to help them become, get into the pipeline quicker, or, it's going to make training easier, where it's just like, no, you just got to take a step back, really got to focus on like, hey, am I having proper movement patterns? Am I progressing correctly? Because, you get a client right away and they're just like, hey, I want to just get wrecked from day one until I leave. And it's just like, that is, please, no. It's just like, we got to build into it. Every coach knows you're not going to just start on like step 9 when they should be on step 1. So it's making sure that they understand, like, we need to slowly build into this. I mean, this could be a year-long process for you to even get to, starting the pipeline. So it's just like the slower we start, the more room you have to make progress. And explaining that to them is always tough at first, but then they start to understand and they start to see improvements and going that way, monitoring them through, since a lot of these guys are online, I'll have them use Garmin, I'll have them use Strava to make, seeing if their paces are right. I'll have them use heart rate zones if they have access to a heart rate monitor. If not, I use Jack Daniels run calculator. So that's really good to see, like, what was their most recent 1 mile time, recent 2 mile time. And then you plug that into the calculator and then it kind of like spits out like what training. So if you're going to go out there and do an easy run, it's just like, well, let's just say your 2 mile time was 13:30. So you're going to have like an easy run. I believe it's around like almost, 8:30 a mile or closer to 9-minute mile. And it just kind of keeps them in check. So they're like, hey, I can build on this. Or if we're doing intervals today, I can push it at this point, or we're doing a threshold run, push it there. So it's like kind of monitoring that way, getting their daily training reports. Like, hey, did this work? Did this not work? Should we take a step back from this? Oh, doing some sort of overhead press hurt my shoulder. Well, let's take a video of it next time to see what you're doing. Because especially if you're going to buds, you got a lot of stuff overhead. So the last thing you want to do is hurt them overhead work wise, but we also want to make sure, like, why does it hurt overhead? Right. A lot of things I've seen too is, got to do neck training. A lot of people forget the necks for training on pipeline stuff. So it's that's got to be worked on. See, it just, you don't need to do 50 miles a week for running. That's another thing that people think they need to do, is like, you don't need to do it, especially right away. It's like, just build into it. Junk miles can end up really hurting you on the long run. It's always quality over quantity. So it's just like, if you can build up to doing, 40 miles a week of quality running and you can recover from it, great. But if you're not recovering, then really just digging yourself into a hole. And the last thing you want to do is show up to a selection process hurt and broken, because it's just going to get worse from there. So it's like you get them into a point where like they feel good and they can get into the pipeline. So that's what I've really seen, is making sure that they've got a solid, head when they're going in. Cause I mean, that's another thing we work on. Building delete really gets into that mental stuff, and then making sure that they're not doing too much when they get to the pipeline, they're crushed. Cause I mean, it's just bad.
Yeah. And there was a guy the other day, he had his ruck on, and, the smoke out here in Washington is pretty bad right now from, all that,
it's bad in Minnesota here too.
Yeah. Oh, is it really? Is it getting that bad too?
Yeah.
Cause that, we looked at the AQI and can we go outside or not? And the AQI was, I think it was 178, which is hot. That's very high. So, this guy needed to do his training indoors, and he put on his ruck and he went on a Woodway treadmill, Woodway curve, and he was on that for literally 3 hours.
Mm.
And, talking to him afterwards, I'm like, what are you following? Like, where are you getting this from? And why is that the number you need to be going after right now? And trying to get him to understand how this acute session is going to affect everything globally.
Mm-hmm.
Because he probably did that Thursday. So if I see him on Monday, he might still be destroyed. I have no idea. But
well, it was like what you were talking about earlier about the Russian sports scientists and how, they really started we're 30 years behind where they are since the Soviet Union collapsed. So it just like, everyone's like, we just need volume, always volume. It's like, oh, take a step back here a second.
Yeah.
So
it depends on what drugs you're putting in, like how much volume are you going to be able to recover from? But yeah, man, that's the big, thing that I've come to realize is, there was another guy when I first got here he showed me his workout, and it's from this company. I'm not going to say what company, but it's just absurd. Like, whoever's there, I don't think anybody has any kind of quals. Like, there's no way, because it's just insane volume. And I was like, hey man, I know we just met, but trust me on this. How about you cut everything you're going to do, keep it all in there, cut it in half. Literally take everything they've assigned you, cut it in 50% off.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, all right, I'll do it for a week. And performance started to go up, 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 up. And now he's no longer with that company following their training programs. It's like, yeah, man, you need far less than you think, because you are so active all the time.
Mm-hmm. And guys aren't eating enough either. I mean, if they're out there they're only eating 2,000, 3,000 calories a day when they should probably be eating, 6,000.
Yeah.
It's comes to access of food once again, as we were talking about earlier. And it's like, are they in the barracks, and do they have access to it? I mean, it's like, but you also have to fuel yourself. Then we have to get into the, talking about sleep and how the military is with that. I mean, if you're not recovering, and issues arise from that, and leads to, nicotine use and alcohol abuse and stuff like that. So it's, it's a systemic problem that needs to be addressed big time.
Yeah. Because the nutrition piece, from what guys have told me about the DFAC, and they send, they'll give you a 2 or 3 ounce protein portion. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the DFAC needs specific instructions on the type of guys that I'm working with. So it's like, you need to understand their physical demands are much different than, I don't know, an accountant, or right. Whatever, like a military accountant or something. I mean, that guy's probably not doing anything. And we have to. The big thing is, for our 6 months that guys are here for their selection, it's like they need to account for about a 30-pound loss once they start team, and that's considered average. So if they get here and they weigh 150 pounds, all right, man, you're going to be 120 pounds with the same relative weight that you have to carry around. Mm-hmm. I would rather you get, this sounds bad, but I'd rather you get fat and put on some bulk so that you have it to lose and draw from, as you're going to be in a huge caloric deficit.
No, I 100% agree. Guys that I've worked with, it's just add a couple, because you're gonna lose it, and your scores might not be top of the top right now, but it's gonna be worth it at the end when the guys who are at that top are trailing behind you now, because you got to the weight you need to be at, type of thing. So I mean, if you're 2-3% above the body fat percentage you're normally at for training, and you just kind of push it up there, and it's you're going to be sitting a little bit better than some others. So it's an important thing, and nutrition definitely should not be overlooked.
Yeah.
Same with recovery. Just don't take recovery for granted, especially you're young, 18 years old, something like that. I mean, you can pretty much do anything to your body, and you're going to be bouncing back from it. But then as soon as you hit 25, it's just, shit.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny to watch, to see how the different age groups, do their preparatory work every day. The 18-year-olds might nah, I'll do it. But they go through it quickly, and the older guys are I'm going to take this a little more seriously. but yeah, same thing with going back to the sleep that you mentioned a minute ago. You know, their sleep habits are a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to implement some new sleep strategies for them to make sleep more of a requirement, but whether or not that's actually happening is yet to be seen. So
I think the Navy's making it mandatory. You get 6 hours of sleep a night or something like that. And they're actually tracking it, which is cool. They have like, I don't know if it's like a wrist monitor or something, but I saw something along those lines that they're having officers and enlisted do that, which is important because of, you don't want issues on the sea with guys falling asleep behind things. And I think that should be implemented across military wide, just because how important it is, not only for recovery, but decision making.
Yep.
The last thing you want is guys walking around like zombies and having to make split second decisions, and they can't.
Yeah.
So, that it's important to get sleep.
Yeah. That's exactly what I think they mentioned that at the TSAC this past week. One of the first lectures was, what happens if you're underslept? What happens if you're overslept? Where you're getting into like 12 hours of sleep, and then what if you're like a normal amount of sleep? What they would probably say 7 to 8 hours or whatever. But I know a bunch of the tactical guys were kind of scoffing at it because like, when and how are we going to get uninterrupted sleep? But she did come back to it and touch on, here's the importance of a nap. Here's how nap can be implemented. And just again, coming back to the education piece we mentioned, educating these guys on everything is going to be huge so they can actually apply the stuff.
Like the 30-minute nap in the afternoon, if you can get it, or 10-minute cat nap here, 10-minute cat nap there. I mean, it makes a big difference instead of just always trying to push through it. Also, you can get into the use of caffeine.
Yeah.
You want to go down that rabbit hole and just really pumping yourself full of stuff. I mean, it's there. I mean, if like you're going to use coffee and stuff like that, sure, go ahead. But if you're constantly putting, if you're Monster, Rain, or what are the other ones out there, Bang, if you're constantly using that, there's a whole bunch of other things in there too, other than caffeine, that you're putting in your body that may or may not be beneficial.
Yeah. And that's all that they claim is in there too. And like the quote unquote proprietary blend, it's like,
what is this blend actually?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that was the other thing that shocked me is there is an actual list of, hey, this supplement list you can get pop for if they drug test you, and
use that NSF for sport. Just be safe. Don't, anyone in the military right now listening to this, just don't take something and hope that it's going to be the best. Another thing that I've found is if you are taking a supplement and you don't want to check, keep a little bit of that supplement and the bottle, because you can be like, hey, I didn't know it was in this and it was a contaminated supplement, and you can show it to them. Be like, hey, this is what I have.
Oh, so they can test that piece.
Yep. Okay. Like, hey, I had no idea this is what was in it. And, it's just smart move. Just cover your bases.
Yeah. Yeah. The one that some guys have introduced me to is Mountain Ops. Have you tried any of their stuff?
I have not. No, I've been using Thorn for a while. It makes life easy.
I see a lot of good things with Thorn and a lot of people using that. So I still have yet to try it, but yeah, the Mountain Ops is supposed to be from military members. Like I think it's some military member founded it. So we'll have to double check, but I'm pretty sure it's NSF certified or whatever. But yeah, what Thorn stuff are you messing with?
Creatine. I like their beta alanine, which is like a slow release. Their magnesium at night, kind of like chill out. It's really about it. I don't really take too many supplements. I just, I try to get it all from food sources, because you don't want to OD on a specific certain something. I mean, just kind of cover your bases: protein powder, creatine, beta alanine, kind of call it a day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing that cracks me up is I have these young guys run up to me and ask like, hey, what supplement? We start with, okay, well, hold on a second. Did you have breakfast this morning? Well, no, but I don't want to talk to you anymore. It's like, go away, eat breakfast, then you're lunch.
if you're eating everything and you're still having issues with stuff, then we can start looking at supplementation. But if you're skipping every meal, it's another thing that needs to be addressed too, is like stop skipping. Supplements aren't a cure all.
Right. What other stuff you want to cover? Anything in particular, or things you've been seeing?
1x20 method works well for people who are just getting into training. Dr. Yesus is 1x20 method. Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you heard of it?
I remember seeing it. I haven't bought it yet.
Okay. Well, it's like, so you'd pick one exercise, or not one, his premises is like, there's so many parts of the body that need to be trained, right? So if you got a vertical push, you got a vertical pull, horizontal push, horizontal pull. And then you can also pick all the different muscle groups, and you have to understand how each muscle works and stuff, but you can pick exercises that are aimed at each of the way that you want the body to move for a specific thing. So you do one set of 20 reps. So it's like, this is almost like a failure set. Like they might not even make it to the 20 reps. And you try and get them to get the 20 reps, like every time for like, let's just say like 2-3 weeks. And then you would bump it down to maybe like 18 reps, then 16, and then you could go 14. And then you kind of like recycle through that process. And it really has their numbers go up. You're hitting everything quick in and out of the gym. Do it like 2-3 times a week, and it just kind of seems to work well for very novice athletes. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing I found that works pretty well. Okay. Also doing like maybe like a little bit of metabolic conditioning at the end of like a session, like a 20-minute EMOM or 10-minute EMOM or something like that. Just kind of gets them, they get they get smoked at the end of a session, and it's like they feel good, but it's not doing so much where it's going to harm them for the next time they come in.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been playing around with right now, and just seeing how that works. It's been working decently.
Yeah. Because the
report back.
Yeah, because you kind of break it down into like, you got your impact cardio and non-impact cardio is how I'll explain it to these guys. And then, that's the great part about sleds is, there's no eccentric component. So, I mean, unless you're absolutely obliterating somebody, they're not going to be trashed the next day. They should be good. So we've been doing a lot of like sled relays, and sometimes it'll be weighted and all sorts of stuff just to throw in some stuff in the mix.
Oh, another thing we should, I'd like to just address for just like a short little bit is not doing everything, front and back, right? So we're just going to keep everything in the sagittal plane. Let's move out. Let's go to the transverse. Let's get some rotation. Let's get some frontal plane work side to side. So it's, you have a whole body, you need to train it. And especially within a tactical population, you don't know what's going to occur. So you should be able to move your body in every way. Just be able to move your body. Mobility is very important.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah, for sure. So like, I'll break down stuff where I'm going like, if I have a DUP kind of layout cycle, on the strength focused day, it's heavy bilateral work on the front side. And then on the back side of that strength day, we still will implement a lot of unilateral work, and then on the power day, we'll generally do, we'll go vertical, but we'll also go forward, do rotational throws. I really like the med ball. You take a partner, you spread out, probably 4 or 5 yards. You throw a med ball every which way possible within the zone that they could actually catch it.
Oh, yeah.
Teaching them different ways to absorb, transfer, and create force. So like, those are some things that we'll throw in, but what's some stuff that you like to add in from a rotational standpoint?
Rotation with med balls. I like doing that. I also like using like bands attached to a rig. So they're kind of really making sure that they're getting the hips through.
Like on an RDL? Or do you mean like you have it hooked up to?
Like I have the band hooked up to the side, and they're like kind of like pulling it.
Okay, I got you.
It'd almost be like a baseball swing, but kind of because I mean, if you think about it, like breaching, kind of hitting that with the sledgehammer type of thing. Doing that, there's it got mace work kind of with things, playing around with that a little bit. Not too big into that, but done that with rotation. Also doing like with sleds, if we're going to go with sleds, you can do like sidewalks. That helps with the frontal plane. So I like doing that. Really focusing on the knees, making sure that like ACL stuff won't occur, or keep it as minimal as possible. Especially like I got airborne guys. You don't that impact there. So yeah, so I mean keep it really simple, just very simple with like rotational med ball stuff, rotational with bands, and landmine stuff works well, I think, with rotation as well. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, with the knees, we'll do a lot of TKEs.
Oh, yeah.
We'll do a 4-way TKE, so that way we're not just hitting that front side. Yeah. But I really like that, and I mean, I know the guys are bored to death with it, but when I started explaining to them, like, hey, we've got to have the stability in the knee, and here's how and why it's important. So don't just go through the motions on this one. It actually has to be slowed down and methodical. You can't just
right. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I like that lateral sled walk.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like doing it. But I think it's very effective, good one the guys need to be doing.
Just like Bulgarians, no one likes doing them, but they're always in a program.
I saw a meme last week. This dude was like, he texts his coach. He's like, "Hey, coach, can you take out the Bulgarian split squat?" And the coach sends back split squats. And he's like, "What the hell, man? It's the same thing."
Yeah.
But yeah, any kind of single leg work. Just the worst part is like you have to go back and do the other leg. Yeah, you're just gassed.
The other week I did front or dumbbell or kettlebell front rack elevated split squats, and that is a pain. Oh God!
So you had the elevation on the front side and back foot, so you're going down.
No, it's just the front foot elevated. Okay. I had two. Like it was 70 pounds in each arm or something like that. And it was rough. It was like sets of 8. I'm like, this is bad choice.
Just laying on the floor dying afterward.
Yep. Because it's just like you get to the second leg and once you're done with that, it's just like, all right, I need like 4 minutes of recovery here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, I was playing around with that. The one where you basically elevate, say you've got 2 boards under the front foot and 1 board under the back. And then you've got, that increases the distance. I saw that first from Joe DeFranco, and it's pretty sadistic, like really increases the range. And whether you're doing, front rack, single arm, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's a way to get even more range through that loading pattern.
Yep.
And that's another thing that I'll talk to guys about. And just, we had 5 new guys get up here last week and talking about like, hey, none of you need to be married to any specific exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have no idea this guy's training background. He might have garbage shoulders. So, based on that, a back squat might just be out of the question.
Yeah.
Because the external rotation that you're having to hold that bar in for so long. So
I like safety bars.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Those, do you have those Kabuki safety bars?
No, I don't. I have the Elite FTS one.
The SS yoke one?
Yep.
Yeah. And the anything where those guys can grab and it's like, hey, we don't even have to worry or consider the shoulders in this one necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see a guy doing a different thing, don't think it's better or worse. It's an alternative for a lot of reasons. But
Oh, and then what is other things I've heard of using, safety bars like that, but they have pads on it. So they're, bitch pads. It's just like, no, just stop right there. It's a whole different movement. And it's just, it's like, you can't squat because of your shoulders. I mean, it's just like, well, you're going to be able to squat with this, and then they try it out and it's like, oh, wow. I'm like, yep, it works.
Yeah. Same thing with, like we'll get into going back to the training age on some of these guys when we're going over deadlift progressions. I like to start them out on a high handle trap bar dead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's the shortest range that I can have where the least amount of likelihood that something could go wrong, So the shortest distance where they're squared up. Mm-hmm. And then we'll gradually increase that distance and eventually move it into a straight bar and then all these different positions. But You know, some of these guys just come in for some reason with that mindset of, well, there has to be a straight bar, it has to be a squat, and it has to be a bench and a dip. And if it's not, it sucks.
Exactly. And we're not power lifters, guys. Calm down.
Yeah, take it easy. But yeah, man. So, anything else you wanted to cover or get into, or?
No, I think that's it. I mean, it's just, everything's for the soldier. They're the ones on the ground doing all the work, and so we got to make them the best that they can be.
Yeah, for sure. What about so social media? Where can people find you? And do you have a blog that you maintain, or any kind of thoughts you put out about training, nutrition, recovery, anything like that?
Something I've been wanting to do for a while. I need to get on it. I do have an Instagram. I'm more active on Instagram than any other. Well, LinkedIn too, but it's just my first and last name, so you can look that up, Joe Dzubak, and you'll be able to find me.
How do you spell Dzubak, real quick?
Dzubak.
All just one word for the Instagram?
Yep, it'd be Joe Dzubak, just all one word.
Gotcha. Okay. So. And then, are you like the only Joe Dzubak on LinkedIn, or there?
Yes. Yep. Okay. I am.
Cool, that makes it easy. Sweet, man. Well, thanks a lot for hopping on. I really appreciate it. And
thank you.
I'll get this chopped up and posted within the next couple days.